Romans 1 and 20. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. So it's telling you basically everybody has some kind of a knowledge of God. Remember, knowledge that God exists? It comes from nature. Knowledge in God is when you put your faith in God. Two different things. So I got a couple of mind teasers to get going because this is a pretty heavy duty stuff. So just to get our brains loosened up. Let's have a prayer first, then we'll do the mind teasers. How's that one? So let's do, somebody lead us in prayer. Somebody want to lead? Yep.
Bill, I ask that you be with us tonight, Lord. Give us the understanding to understand what's going to be said here tonight, Lord. I pray that you would just move here, Lord, and that you would learn more about believing in, Lord, and not just believing that of the things that you've shown us, Lord. So I ask these things in your son's name.
Amen. So we're going to be in video number 3, about a 30-minute video, and we'll do a little bit of review. So to get your brains working, somebody tell me, who eats M&Ms here? Huh? Everybody does, right? So you get down to the last one. What do you have? An M or an M&M? Huh? Which one? An M&M or an M? No, you have an M. Yeah, it actually has an M on there. See, we're trying to figure out the origin of the universe. We can't figure out if we have an M or an M&M, right? There's your brain teaser. The other one is, just imagine a fly. You're watching him. He goes right up here. He lands on the ceiling, right? You ever seen that happen? You ever seen one miss? So how did they learn? How fast do they flip over before they land? You ever seen them flip over? What? Oh, you never thought of that, have you? So these are mind teasers here, right? I never seen one miss. How did they know how to land? I don't know. Maybe God told them. Did they circle? Y'all have to watch that one out. Okay. So, all right, you've got enough mind teasers. So we learned that truth is absolute, right? Are there any truths that are not absolute? Are there any truths out there that are not absolute? Yeah, they're either truth or they're not, right? We also learned about the law of non-contradiction, right? So that's what makes the truth true. It can't be both true and false at the same time. And we say these all the time in society. I was watching the news this afternoon. They were talking about a local football team who's teaching their students how to tackle differently to keep from getting hurt. And at the end, the newscaster, I guess, was quoting the coach, and he goes, well, the most important thing to us is winning, but safety comes first. No, he said winning comes first, but safety is most important. Is that a contradictory statement? So I wanted to say, well, which one is it? It's either winning or safety, because you just said, but they want to make all of them fit together, see? That's just the way we do it in society. So we have 3 arguments for the existence of God that we looked at last week, and we're going to continue that. So what's the first argument? Cosmological, which basically means what? It's a universe. It had a beginning, right? If it had a beginning, then what do you have to have? A beginner, right? The Big Bang. It had a Big Banger, right? The second one is what? We're going to be doing that tonight. What's the second one? It's a big word. Time for big words. Teleological, which means design. It means design theory, or the study of design. The universe has a definite design. There's another word that comes in that area, and it talks about how the universe is designed specifically for human life. What's that called? Anthropic principle. Yeah, we're going to look at more of that tonight. This is big word night, made easy, okay? So last week we also learned that there were 5 reasons that God exists. Y'all remember what that was? It was one word, but it had 5 reasons behind it. Surge. So what's the first scientific proof that God exists?
The second law of thermodynamics.
Which states, second law of thermodynamics, which is also called entropy.
Everything leads to chaos.
Yeah, pretty much everything wearing out. So no matter what happens, if you build something, I got a brand new car. Now it's not so brand new. I have to have new tires, right? The tires never get younger. They always get older. That's S. What's U? Ooh. It's actually U and E. Universe is expanding. They know that for fact. So if it's expanding, that leads back to the idea that it had started somewhere. Okay? That gives you the beginning. SUR is? Radiation afterglow. Just like when you turn, in the old days, these don't do it. The old TVs, they had it glow. So basically, it's part of the anthropic, I guess, where the universe is losing energy, it's converting energy, and they can tell the afterglow. The other one is R, which is radiation shift. Radiation. They can tell basically, it's called the G is the galaxy seeds, and that's because of the heat. Excuse me. There's a certain amount of heat in the galaxy it took. Without that heat, they wouldn't come together. Now I don't know how that works out, but that's what it says, right? And E is what? Einstein's theory of relativity basically said there had to be a beginning, and he was right. And he fudged. Yeah, he actually didn't like that. He wanted it to be constant because he knew if there's a beginning, there had to be what? A beginner. Yeah. So pretty much, if you look at all the science out there, it's there. It's overwhelmingly there is a God. But once again, people can believe there's a God, but they don't believe in a God. They don't want to be responsible to God. So this week we're going to look at divine design, theological, and the anthropic principle. So we're going to look really close into what he's saying here. So you're going to find it even gets more profound as you go. And yet the world out there still thinks that it just happened, right? This stuff just doesn't happen. So let's play lesson 3 from I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Dr. Yes.
All right, what we're going to do now is talk about God existing. It's the second argument for the existence of God. We call this divine design. So we're still in point 2, does God exist? And in future nights, we're going to get into miracles. We'll talk about miracles. I won't do miracles. I'm going to have Derwin come in and do some miracles. I'm just going to talk about them. And then we'll get into the New Testament in May. So next week we're going to be back talking about miracles and evolution and that kind of thing. But right now we're still talking about does God exist? And this is called the teleological argument, the argument from design. And it goes back to William Paley's argument that if you found this watch in the woods, would you think it was made by natural law? You know, you're just kind of walking along in the woods and you see a diamond-studded Rolex and you pick it up and you go, I don't need to turn this in. This was made by the wind and the rain. No. Well, it turns out that every watch implies a watchmaker. Well, both the universe and life appear to be designed, and to a much greater degree than a watch is designed. And we're going to look at the universe first because we just got talking about how the universe exploded into being out of nothing. And let me make a couple of quick adjustments to what I said before. When I said the second law of thermodynamics shows that the total amount of energy is being used up in the universe, what it means is energy, the total amount of energy stays the same, but the amount of usable energy is decreasing. So the proportional amount of usable to unusable continues to change to ultimately you run out of energy completely. I'm not saying energy goes out of existence. I'm saying it's being used up into unusable energy. Also, someone had a question before or during the break about quantum causality and all this. The short answer to the quantum causality thing, and we talk about this in the book, is when some atheists saying, well, the universe could have popped out of into existence out of the quantum vacuum. The quantum vacuum is not nothing. The quantum vacuum is something. It's a sea of fluctuating energy. Who created the quantum vacuum? Okay? There's a beginning to space, matter, and time. It wasn't a quantum vacuum. It wasn't swirling mathematical points. It wasn't It wasn't positive and negative energy. It was nothing. No space, no matter, no time, what rocks dream about. And this universe came into existence. And it did come into existence with extreme design. In fact, as we look here at the universe, we're going to see a principle that some scientists call the anthropic principle. What's the anthropic principle? That the universe is highly fine-tuned for human life to exist. In fact, it's highly fine-tuned even for us to have chemistry. Because there would be no universe, not just universe with life, but if certain constants or factors about the universe were altered slightly, there wouldn't even be galaxies. There wouldn't even be the ability to have heavier elements. So the universe is highly fine-tuned to be here, and also highly fine-tuned for life. The anthropic principle, anthropos meaning man or mankind. Universe highly fine-tuned for mankind. And we'll start again with our favorite atheist here, Stephen Hawking, who put it this way with regard to the expansion rate of the universe. He said if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million, a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. If you were to change the expansion rate, that infinitesimal amount, we wouldn't be here. In fact, the expansion rate right now is highly fine-tuned. Einstein talked about a cosmological constant. He had the wrong cosmological constant. There is a real cosmological constant which is somehow causing the universe to accelerate. The universe is accelerating right now. We don't know why. Some scientists are calling it dark energy. We just don't know why, but the universe is speeding up. So there's going to come a point in time, unless God intervenes, we're not even going to be able to see the next galaxy because things are receding out. By the way, this answers the claim that many say, well, couldn't the universe collapse back on itself and then reemerge again? No. The best data we have now shows that the universe will expand forever to heat death. So it's not a cyclical thing. But think about that infinitesimal change. We wouldn't even be here if somebody didn't fine-tune the expansion rate. The precision right now of the gravitational force, if it were altered by 1 part in 10 to the 40, we wouldn't be here. What's 1 part in 10 to the 40? It's hard to get our minds around that, so let me give you a couple of illustrations. If the universe is 13.7 billion years old, you know how many seconds that is? That's 10 to the 17 seconds. What's the difference between 10 to the 17 and 10 to the 18? 10. What's the difference between 10 to the 18 and 10 to the 19? 10. You're adding another 0. We're at 10 to the 40 here. 10 to the 40. That's 1 with 40 zeros following it. Now, how precise is that? Take a tape measure and stretch it across the entire known universe. That's a long way. Set the gravitational force at a particular inch mark on that tape measure. I know gravity's not measured in inches. This is just to give you a scale idea in your mind, what we're talking about here. If you were to move the strength of gravity 1 inch in either direction, we wouldn't be here. That's 1 in 10 to the 40 precision. I don't have enough faith to believe that that just happened by chance. It takes more faith to believe it happened by chance than to say there's got to be a designer, a fine-tuner out there. In fact, there's only 3 possibilities for this. Chance, physical necessity, in other words, it had to be this way. It doesn't. That gravitational force does not have to be at that level, does not have to be that factor, but it is. Or design. Seems to me design is the inference to the best explanation. It's not chance. It's not physical necessity. We're left with design. By the way, it's not just the gravitational force constant and the expansion rate of the universe that's highly fine-tuned. We even have a habitability argument with regard to our solar system, that it's just right for us to exist. Where are we in the solar system, by the way? There we are, third rock from the sun, right? If we were just a little bit closer to or a little bit further away, we wouldn't be here. A little bit closer to, we'd burn up. A little bit further away, we'd freeze. We are what scientists call the Goldilocks zone. It is not too hot. It is not too cold. It is just right. The axial tilt, 23.5 degrees. Change that slightly, we don't exist. Earth rotation, 24 hours. Change that slightly, we don't exist. The size and distance of the moon from us, if you were to change that slightly, we wouldn't exist. If Jupiter was not in its current orbit, we wouldn't be here. Why not? What does Jupiter do? Jupiter's gravitational force is so strong, it acts as a cosmic vacuum cleaner to attract many of the meteors and space junk to it rather than us. You may have seen recently in the news that scientists believe there might be a big asteroid that's going to hit the world, Earth, in 2040. I'm rooting for Jupiter. In fact, take a close-up look at Jupiter. Do you know what those purple marks are right there? You know what those are? Those are comet fragment strikes that are bigger than the Earth. Thank God for Jupiter. Because if Jupiter wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. The same thing is true with Saturn. You want to get an idea of the size of Jupiter? Check this out. There's Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Earth. Look at poor Pluto down here. Do you know Pluto recently has been demoted as a planet? I don't know about you, but I think it's size discrimination. Take a look at this. You can hardly see Pluto. All right, take a look at this now. That's Arcturus. That's another star in our galaxy. The sun is right here. Jupiter is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Earth is invisible. Pluto, forget about it. Okay, keep an eye on Arcturus. You got Arcturus right there? Now take a look at this. Where's Arcturus? There's Arcturus to the left of the white star Rigel. See that? That's Antares, another star in our galaxy. The sun is 1 pixel in size on this. Jupiter is invisible. Earth, Pluto, forget about them. The heavens are awesome. This is just in our galaxy. In fact, if the Earth were the size of a golf ball, Beetlejuice, this one over here, yes, I know it's a movie, but if the Earth were the size of a golf ball, Beetlejuice would be 5 or 6 Empire State Buildings high. The average distance between stars in our galaxy is 30 trillion miles. All that distance is necessary for us to exist here on Earth. Now, 30 trillion miles. How far is 30 trillion miles? Far. Take you at least 2 tanks of gas in a Toyota Prius to go 30 trillion miles. That is, if the gas pedal doesn't stick. We were out in the Desert Museum a number of years ago. My wife's parents are from Tucson. They live in Tucson now. We went out in the Desert Museum. Anyone here from Tucson? All right. You live there, Tucson. Nice place. But they have a desert museum that you can go to at night, and it's kind of a ways away from the city, so there's no city lights. And you can see forever up into the heavens. It's amazing. We could see satellites in orbit. In fact, the guide who was out there said, hey, if we look up at 9:03, it's such a clear night, we'll see the space shuttle in orbit. I said, space shuttle? We're not going to see the space shuttle. I mean, it's 120 feet long. It's 350 miles up. We're not going to see it. Oh, me of little faith. At 9:03, the guide goes, look! And we look up in the sky about 70 degrees above the horizon. There's an object coming out of the west, streaking across the sky relative to us about like this. I mean, it is really cooking. When it got right about here, it disappeared. I don't know whether Scotty beamed it up or what, but it was just cruising across the sky, and then suddenly it was gone. Now, when the space shuttle is in orbit, it's traveling at about 18,000 miles an hour. Goes around the Earth about once every hour and 15 minutes. That's 5 miles per second. You got trouble getting to work in the morning? Take the space shuttle. You'll be there. 5 miles a second. Think about that. Now, I did a little calculation. I was trying to figure out how long would it take us if we could get in the space shuttle and go from our star, the sun, to another star in our galaxy, an average distance away, 30 trillion miles. How long would it take us? Going 5 miles a second to go 30 trillion miles. How long? Years? Long time? Good answer. Yeah. It would take us 201,450 years. That means if you got in the space shuttle at the time of Christ and started traveling to another star in our galaxy an average distance away, you'd be less than 1/100th of the way there right now. And we're going to explore space. No, we're not. We are not going anywhere in space. Who'd like to go to the next nearest star? We'll go, get in.
The anthropic principle.
We're almost there yet, Dad.
And scientists are really getting their heads around the last probably 20 years. And that means everything's fine-tuned for life here on Earth. So what you see in the movies and people's imagination is there's millions and billions of stars. There's got to be a planet somewhere with people at least with 2 legs and running around. And so the idea that there's alien life out there is pretty popular. But it doesn't really support that based on a lot of the evidence. So just in our solar system, there's about 10 factors. He named about 5 of them. Some people say about 120 what they call principles, anthropic principles. And that basically means, just think of it as fine-tuned dials. He'll tell you about that. And if they have to be just right. If one dial moves, the other dials are messed up. Okay? It's kind of like your car. If the tires are flat, you can't go anywhere. If the motor's one piece of the important part of the car messes up, you can't go. So basically, anthropic principle says life, even at the universe level, is finely tuned for life here on Earth. And it's the distance from the sun, right? How far we're tilted. If we were off just a little bit, we would burn up and freeze. And they're going to talk about other things later on. The distance of the moon, how the 24-hour day, if it was a little slower, a little faster, we would burn up, freeze. There's a lot of stuff out here. You know, if you just thought about it, you couldn't sleep at night. Something happens, Earth stops just a little bit, right? And I never knew about Jupiter. Did y'all know that? Yeah. It sucks all the asteroids in. Its gravity is so strong, anything coming this direction, it's a vacuum cleaner. There's a lot of stuff that would have hit us, but it hits Jupiter, right? That's just a few things. And I was amazed that the distance between suns in our galaxy is 30 million miles. That's the shortest. 30 trillion miles. You ain't getting there. The idea of space travel, and the only way you can get there if you're a sci-fi fan is how? Sleep. Wormhole. We don't know what that is yet, though, huh? Huh? Light speed. Faster than light drive. Well, we don't have any of that yet. 30 million miles. Right now, we're pretty much stuck on the third rock from the sun. And it looks like life is actually focused in there. Even at the highest level, universe is basically, its life is special right here. And that's what he's getting at. That's hard for us to understand. Because the idea that there's millions of planets out there possibly. Gosh, there's got to be at least one, right? So, it sounds like maybe not. But listen to him. Go ahead.
Anywhere. Another 200,000 years, play some more Xbox. Think about that. And how many stars are out there? The number of stars that are out there are about equivalent to the number of grains of sand on all the beaches on all the earth. And to go from one grain of sand to another grain of sand going 5 miles a second, just in our galaxy, will take you over 200,000 years. You see this picture here on the left? That's from the ground. You see that little square right there? That's this square from the Hubble Space Telescope. Those are stars. February 1st, 2003, President of the United States goes into the East Room in the White House. It's Saturday morning, 9 a.m. They turn the TV camera on. Every major network carries his address. Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Why? The president looks into the camera and says, "My fellow Americans, this morning our nation experienced a great tragedy. Upon re-entry into the atmosphere, the space shuttle Columbia burned up in the skies over Texas. There are no survivors. The Columbia is lost." The president then went on to quote from Isaiah chapter 40 and verse 25. Why Isaiah chapter 40, verse 25? Because in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 25, God is speaking. And here's what God says. To whom will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One. In other words, you want to know what I'm like? Here's the comparison. Lift your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these stars and named them one by one? Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing. The president looked back in the camera and said, the same God that created and named all those stars is the same God that created and knows the names of the 7 astronauts who perished today. While they did not return safely home to us, we can all now pray that they've all returned safely home. You want to know who God is? Most Christians have the wrong idea of who God is. We think God is a big angel. God is not a big angel. You want to know who God is? Remove all limits from your mind. That's God. If he's an ounce of any attribute, he's infinite in that attribute. If he's an ounce of love, he's infinite love. An ounce of justice, infinite justice. An ounce of power, infinite power. He is the standard by which everything else is measured. Why is there a second commandment? Thou shalt make no graven image. Or one reason why is there a second commandment. Because
how we limit God? Did you get what he said? Whatever our thoughts of God are, put them aside. They're infinite, right? It's just amazing. If you think of how big the universe is, 30 trillion miles between stars, and there's more stars out there than the grains of sand of the earth, and yet God is bigger than that and more infinite than that. And I love that he said if he's an ounce of love, he's infinite love. So guess what? Did you get that connection between the universe God created and the people here? That connection? You know, they returned home. Well, that's what he said. Wow. I mean, the same God that made these stars and he made this incredible universe created you and me. Why would he do that? There's no logical reason behind that, right? Other than, what do you think? Love. And we got an idea of love, don't we? But our idea of love is not even close to who he is, right? He's infinite. Bigger than you can imagine. Greater than you can imagine. And I can imagine some pretty big stuff. I thought that was pretty profound what he said. All these numbers out here is pretty fascinating to me, all the physics behind the universe. But right there was the key statement right there. It says, that's why we don't make idols to God. Because nothing we can do or think or say can even come close to who he is. The only way we can know God is to give ourselves to him, right? And let him come in here and show us. And you know what? The Bible even says sometimes he speaks to us in unknowable words. He just lets us know. Wow. Indescribable, isn't it? Wow. In fact, you remember what Moses asked, God at the burning bush? He said, who shall I send me? What did he say? I am that I am. He didn't say, remember, I am. He's before time. He said, the I am that I am. There's no beginning and there's no end. That's who's sending you, right? That's just amazing to me. Wow. Okay, let's go. Listen.
Why is there a second commandment? Image you draw of an infinite being necessarily limits his majesty. You can't draw a picture of an infinite being. An infinite being has no limits. Every picture you draw limits him. That's why the Bible says, if you want to know what I'm like, look to the heavens. When you look to the heavens, what do you see? You see a virtual, infinite expanse. That's the point. Psalm 103, verse 11 says, God's love to those that fear him exceeds the height of the heavens above the earth. How high are the heavens above the earth? Number of stars equivalent to grains of sand on all the beaches on all the earth. 200,000 years between those stars at 5 miles a second. infinite. That's the point. The heavens declare the glory of God. Look to the heavens. His invisible qualities are clearly seen so that men are without excuse. You know there's a creator when you look at a creation. Although some don't look at it that way. In fact, I just mentioned there are three possibilities for this fine-tuning. There's chance, there's physical necessity, and there's also design. I think the first two are too hard to believe. You say, well, what do atheists say about this? Let's take a look at Richard Dawkins from his book, The Blind Watchmaker. And right in the middle of this book, he sums it all up for us. He says, here's the central argument of my book, pages 157 to 158. He says, the appearance of design is overwhelming. Is it overwhelming to you too, when you look at this design? It sure appears to be design. By the way, Dawkins even says this is about biology. He says, biology is the study of complicated things which give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. Aren't we supposed to be scientists, like observing things and then drawing conclusions? If it appears to be designed for a purpose, maybe it is. I mean, if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, squawks like a duck, it might be a duck. So Dawkins admits with regard to the universe, the appearance of design is overwhelming. But then he says there's no explanation for this design in physics. In fact, during one of the debates he had with John Lennox, he got a question from the audience. And the audience went like this: Dr. Dawkins, where did the laws of physics come from? And Dawkins said, well, I have no idea. But bringing God into it doesn't help. Well, I actually think bringing God into it does help. Why? Why is the universe so orderly? Why are these natural forces so predictable and precise? Why can we send a rocket from the earth and put a man on the moon? Why can we put a little rover on Mars? Because we can predict with precision how these laws are going to affect our spaceship. Why is that? This appears to be the product of a mind, not the product of randomness. In fact, you wouldn't even know what randomness was unless you knew what order was. This universe appears to be ordered, highly fine-tuned. It's balanced on a razor's edge. Any one of a number of factors were different, we wouldn't be here. I mean, the anthropic principle, it's as if there is a control room somewhere in the universe, and there's all these dials. Some say scores of dials. Some say more than that, even if it's just 10. All these dials set to precisely the right level. And these dials, by the way, are interconnected. If you go in and turn one of them, the whole universe would go out of existence. Or we wouldn't have a universe where we could have galaxies. It appears there's some mind behind this. But you know what Dawkins says? You know what his explanation for this is? And I'm not making this up. This is out of the book. You can come up here and get the book and read it for yourself if you think I'm making this up. Here's what he says. Maybe the multi-universe theory, which relies on, what word is that right there? Luck. Now, is luck a cause? Even if you're Irish, is luck a cause? No, luck is not a cause. Luck is a word we use to cover our ignorance. Things don't happen by luck. There's always a cause. And Dawkins is saying, well, maybe we just happen to be in the universe which appears to be designed, even though it really isn't. And this is called the multi-universe theory, okay? This is what atheists are coming up with now, that there are many universes out there, and we just happen to be in the universe that looks designed even though it really isn't. Is there any evidence for this? No. It's just a backhanded way of saying, wow, the universe looks really designed, but we're not going to imply a designer. We're going to come up with this speculation to explain it. Here's one of the main problems with it. Even one of the advocates of what's called the multi-universe theory admits, his name is Alexander Vilenkin, I quoted him earlier, admits even if there are other universes out there, the whole show, all the universes together require an absolute beginning. So you don't get rid of the need for an absolute beginner. There was a beginning, even if there are other universes out there. So this doesn't help Dawkins. He has faith that this is the answer. One day we're going to find a natural cause. No, you're not going to find a natural cause for all of nature. And then his big retort is, who made God? We already pointed out that that's a bad question, because if God is timeless and outside the universe, he didn't have a beginning, so no one made him. It's like asking a bachelor, what's your wife's name? Okay? Doesn't make any sense. God is the uncaused first cause. But this is the kind of thing that atheists are saying. All right, what we're going to do now.
So we're in the next week's lesson. It'll be evolution. Even gets more exciting. He's going to show you all the statistics behind evolution, genetic, the code. But basically, the idea of what you start off with, theological theory, is basically very simple. You find this watch laying on the beach, and you don't assume the waves and the sun and the stars made it, do you? You figure somebody intelligent made it, right? And what he's saying is real fascinating. Well, you can't really see it with your eyes, but the universe is much more complex than this watch. Millions of times more complex than this watch. And yet we wouldn't say it happened, would we? So why is it that science doesn't say the universe just... Some people keep saying that happened. It's more profound. And they even say it. They're using the words. It's astounding. It's profound. And the further they get into it. The problem is, I wish I could describe this well. So I'm going to maybe I can do this example, but... So science is just an explanation of what God has done. So science is not its own little world. It's just people trying to describe what they see. So if God made it, scientists are just putting math to it, and they're putting physics to it, the things that have always been there, right? So the universe existed before we had physics and second law of all that stuff. Why? It just did. So just imagine you've never seen a chair before. Okay, it's going to be hard. Just clear your minds. You've never seen a chair. Even though you're sitting in one, you're sitting on the ground right now. You've never seen a chair. And then I'm going to bring this out, and I'm going to ask you to describe that to me, having never seen that before. What are you going to use? You're going to have to come up with some words, aren't you? Right? So scientists had never seen a galaxy before, did they? And they got in a telescope one day, and they saw same thing, so they named it a galaxy. So scientists have named stuff, right? But it was already there, right? So if you had to describe that, you would say, first of all, it's black, right? But if you never sat in it, you wouldn't know what it was for, would you? You might try it eventually, right? You might think it's a ladder. But you've never seen that before. So it's black, and it's made out of metal, and it folds up. And you're going to describe this thing, and you're going to use your terminology. So that's what scientists do. They use math. We invented math for something that's obvious, right? Somebody asked one time, how many chairs in the room, and nobody had any numbers, so they said, well, that's going to be 1, that's going to be 2, that's going to be 3, what's going to be 4? Pretty fine. Oh, what happens if we take away 2? So we invented math. That's something that was already there. Does that make sense? Yeah. So sometimes science gets all caught up in the fact of it created its own language, but it doesn't understand what it created. So it's trying to put meaning behind it instead of just look back and say, oh, okay, I get it. So that's why scientists make bad philosophers. They created the language. Now they can't get out of it, right? So they created a word called evolution, right? And they created things called natural selection. They created things called all kinds of different words, but they made words to try to fit stuff that ain't there. So now they're stuck with all these words. So what do you do with evolution now, right? Do you just toss it out? Well, you should, but they won't, right? So you're going to look at next week evolution. You're going to look at DNA. Genetic code within just a simple cell organism is so complex, it has to be in a certain order, just like the universe. There's more complexity. It doesn't get simpler, it gets more complex. And by the way, you can't start with something uncomplex and make it more. Can't do that. They've been studying for years. There's no transitional forms. They don't really have a fish that became a dog, that became a whatever. It ain't there. They got all kinds of pictures to show you, but it ain't there. It's not there in the fossil record. It's not there anywhere. There is natural selection, and that means, well, I'll get into that next week. It means basically horses have thicker hair in the winter, right? Have you ever been around horses? If you're in a cold country, they grow thicker hair in the winter. That's natural selection. But it doesn't mean it becomes a different animal. It just changes, adapts to the environment. None of that happens. So you're going to see a lot of that next week. So what questions do you have on all this stuff? Remember, this is a big word night, made easy. Anthropic means design for man. Theological means design theory. Basically, it all ends up, there's just a bunch of facts out here that says somebody made this. And you just can't have this much stuff come together and be on accident. It's just not going to happen. And he talks about the fact that the speed of the universe is at 10 times 39 zeros, right? If it went to 40, just 10 more, whoop, it'd blow up. If it was at 38, it would implode. It has to be just there. And it's actually speeding up a little more. But they don't know why. But it had a beginning. So this is all good stuff. Now remember, we refer to the Bible, but this is good stuff because when you go out into the world, people don't know what the Bible says, right? So here's what happens whenever people take their own language and they start believing their own language. Romans 1:19, and then I'm going to read Romans 1:20 and 21. So remember 20 was, for since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. 21. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. So although they saw God, they didn't give God the credit for what he made. They decided, we got our own scientific language, let's go figure this out. Yeah. So unfortunately, for them, it's kind of turned around now. Most of the facts are on the side of creation. Now, you can argue if there's a creator or not, but you can't argue that there was a beginning. They're past that argument. 40 years ago, they were trying to figure out if there was a beginning or not. Now they're past that one. So a beginning in science demands a cause. So for every action, reaction, you've heard that in observation. So we're going to get into that next week. We just did chapter 4 today. I'll be back in 2 weeks. There's 2, not 4. I make up my own numbers. I live in my own little world. And so we'll be back. We'll do chapter 5 and 6. We'll be looking at evolution more or less, about life. Okay. So this week we've gone from universe, anthropic principle down to us. Now we're going to go down to just life itself. Pretty cool, huh? So we're going to find out how these things enter. So anybody have any questions?
Well, it's more like a comment because I like how every time scientists find some proof that points to a creation or a designer, they made up something different to explain it.
Yeah.
To take it away from it. For example, the multiverse.
Yeah.
They have the multiple and infinite universe, so they can explain this one, and they made up everything else.
Yeah.
And also there's the Big Bang where the universe expands and it contracts again and expands again, so it's like a cycle. So they try to make up this math, to make it work.
So the job of science is just basically to observe and put down the facts, right? And so the philosophers are supposed to give meaning behind it, right? And so that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to put meaning into it, and it's not there. And they're trying to figure it out. So they're just looking at the facts and saying, you know what, we give up, these are the facts, and go with it. I think eventually they will, because if God really did create this, then their facts will get even stronger and stronger and stronger. No matter how more powerful our telescopes get, or satellites, or instruments, it will always come back to there was a creator. If God really created it, I'm pretty confident that'll happen. Now there'll be things in the middle that may be debatable, but as you see, science is steadily going towards God. The funny thing is, a lot of people in religion are going away. I don't understand it, but a lot of people, becoming liberal in their theologies. They don't think maybe God created it. I don't know how they get there. But the scientists are actually coming closer to God now. in their thoughts. They're not giving themselves to God, but that's the next step, right? Ours is we describe both, don't we? We tell them why God did things, and that's important. So the reason we know why God did things is that He told us right here, didn't He? Right? So He's going to talk next week. If you had a painting and you see a painting over here, you can kind of tell by the painting what the author likes or what they don't like. You can kind of get an idea of their taste. But you don't know what was going on behind it. You don't know why they painted it. You don't know why. And so if you wrote if the guy who painted the picture wrote a book about the painting and said, I was going through this period of my life, and it was explaining the painting, that would make sense, right? So what this is God is explaining to us why He created us, what happened to us, and how we come home. This is the explanation behind all this stuff. This is a philosophy, I guess you could say it. I don't like that word, but this is the explanation behind the facts. So we got science out here with all these facts, and we have God over here saying how He did it. It all seems to be coming together real easily, right? So when we sing that song called The Great I Am, right? The Great I Am, the I Am that I Am is what we're singing. We're actually singing about the God who existed before time and before the physical universe, who's beyond our greatest imagination. We can't even get there. That's why we have to have faith. We can't get there on our own because we're finite beings trying to understand an infinite God. I don't care how much you learn, you'll never learn enough. So there's a point where you have to say, I believe that God exists, but I'm also ready to put my trust in God. I'm ready to give Him my life. That's the exchange that we make. God created us, gave us all this stuff, right? Anything else? Pretty wild stuff, huh? So y'all glad school started? Who's in school? Anybody hear any of this yet in school? Have you heard some stuff like this? Huh? It's coming. Not yet. So remember, ask questions, right? Roadrunner thing, right? Okay. Let's close in prayer. So, our Father, we thank You so much that You're opening our eyes more and more to who You are. We'll never really know You until we meet You in person. And Father, You are so more infinite than we can imagine. You're so much wiser. You're so much more loving. So we think we know love, but You are truly infinite in love. So teach us those things. Teach us as much as we can absorb, and allow us to act like You love us. So Father, if we just acted halfway as much as You loved us, what a life that would be. So Father, we just ask You to give us wisdom, guide and direct us in the path You'd have us to follow. Father, let us be Your messengers. But Father, let us speak always in love. In the name of Jesus we pray. Amen.